Hi, and welcome to the Take the Stage podcast. I'm your host, Alexis, and I'm on a mission to help make diversity more of a reality for lower middle market and middle market investment firms. Take the Stage celebrates and amplifies diverse voices and serves as a platform for conversations that encompass a wide range of perspectives. You're going to hear candid conversations that touch on career paths, the not so linear kind, valuable insights, practical advice, and honest stories on navigating and succeeding on the buy side. Today on Take the Stage, in our special series, Ladies Who Rock, we shine the spotlight on Isabelle Fuchs, Senior Associate at Eden Capital Management, a female-founded lower middle market private equity firm focused on education, business services, and software. We're going to talk about how setbacks in college became the turning point that shifted her focus to finance and set the stage for her transition into private equity, the power of daily improvement and how consistent small efforts played a key role in achieving her career goals, how describing herself as the laziest not lazy person led her to take charge of leveraging AI at Eden Capital, significantly streamlining deal sourcing and improving outreach, her perspective on mentorship and fostering a supportive environment to empower the next generation of talent, and more. So we're going to start, Isabelle, by giving listeners a quick overview of your journey. And so I'm just gonna jump right into it because there's a lot of things I would love to touch on. But let's start with this. So if you had to describe your career path in 3 key milestones or turning points, what would they be? And this is going to give us a really good foundation to dive deeper into your story, a little bit of an icebreaker here.
Yeah, of course. I'll start from high school, actually, which is probably a lot further than most people would expect I would go. But in high school and middle school even, I was such a competitive soccer player. I'd wake up at 5:45 a.m. and train all day and attend classes when I should. But I was truly very dedicated to the sport. And it was my dream to go professional. And in my beginning of my junior year, I committed to go to Georgetown, and I was super excited, training very hard. But unfortunately, in the fall of my senior year, I tore my ACL. And this was just such a devastating experience for me because I had something to look forward with Georgetown, but also soccer was my everything. And I actually say this was such a blessing in disguise because I was just so dedicated to soccer that I didn't realize that there was much out there else besides what I was focusing on. So this 8 months of recovery, even though I worked really hard in PT and trained to get back to the field, it gave me a lot more time to focus on school and focus on what I wanted to do longer term. So in this time, I decided business and international business particularly was something I was really passionate about. And that really set up a strong foundation for me going into college. Because I knew that soccer, yes, it's still my top priority with going to Georgetown and playing on the team, and still had aspirations to go professional. But I knew that I wanted to be more than just a soccer player, and I wanted to really excel in the classroom as well. Flash forward to college, I finally ease into everything, and I really loved getting back out there and felt like I was myself again on the field. And then in the summer of going into my sophomore year, after 1 year of playing, I toured again. And that was the second inflection point in my career because this sport now seemed to, I wasn't able to compete at the same level I wanted to. Something I put so much energy into, time, commitment, and love, was starting to hurt me. And I felt like it was just so much harder to get back out there. And I recovered as normal, but it was really 2 weeks before preseason started for my junior year that I decided that this was something I can't do anymore. It was hurting me, and then I also felt like it was hurting sort of my future potential. I would go to practice and miss recruiting events my sophomore year, which is just as investment banking recruiting began. So I decided to leave soccer behind and really just focus and lean into what I wanted to do next, which was pursue finance as a junior to senior year internship, and then ultimately a full-time position. So from junior year on to senior year, it was really a great experience to have that regular student experience and really lean into the clubs, focus on my studies more, and best prepare myself for investment banking. And after graduating, I ultimately did take up a full time position at UBS in investment banking. And I really enjoyed that experience because it was such a great learning environment. Everyone really wanted you to exceed. And I was very excited to be there and to learn every day. I was within the equity capital markets group, which I initially chose because of the international component. They at UBS especially had a significant number of international IPOs into the US. But I felt like that alone was not something I wanted to do long term. I missed my accounting courses and my more technical knowledge that I learned in school. So I decided I really wanted to pivot into something like private equity. And this transition, as we'll get into more, was super, super difficult. But I knew this is something that I had to go through and really push myself through to make it into private equity. And ultimately, with the help of Alexis as my recruiter, I was able to land a position at Eden, which has been such a great learning experience. Like every other milestone in the past, it's been a fantastic opportunity just to continue to grow and push towards my ultimate goals.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that you said, you have a very non-traditional path by going, having gone into ECM first, and then making that move to the buy side. And you mentioned that it was a difficult transition, and I kind of wanna link two things here. So I wanna draw on how your experience and those setbacks that you faced in your career, with soccer helped you to maybe push through some of those, because I don't think that I don't think there's a coincidence. I think that sports in general can be a really great character builder. And I want to link this. So I want you to tell me a little bit how you feel that soccer and those setbacks set you up for navigating all these challenges and maybe speed bumps that you had before making that move to Eden.
Yeah, I think one thing I learned from soccer, which is taking it even further back than high school, was it doesn't matter where you start. It just matters the work you put in and and ultimately where you finish. So I felt like I had a little bit more flexibility and could push beyond those barriers. For soccer, I actually was not particularly good when I was younger. I really wanted to make this local club team and I couldn't. Like I couldn't even make their like third division team. But I would keep on going back to those tryouts year after year, and eventually, in eighth grade, I finally made the second team, and then for sophomore year, I finally made the first team. So I knew that it was not that I was in a finished position and was going to ride the path that I was given. I knew that if I just continue to work at it and go interview after interview, I can ultimately make this switch. So I had that internal confidence in myself that just because my background says one thing doesn't mean that I have to ultimately let that dictate the course of where I want to go. And then I also think soccer really taught me that daily increments make the transformational change. So when I was in ECM and I realized that this isn't what I wanted to do longer term, I decided every single day I'm going to do something in my busy working schedule that will help position me better for what I wanted to do longer term. And at the time, I didn't know it was private equity, but I knew it was something more technical. So whether it was reading equity research to see if that's something I wanted to do, or just reaching out to someone on LinkedIn in a career path that I didn't know I wanted to do, I tried to make a small improvement every single day. Until I ultimately figured out that private equity is something I really thought was interesting and was a good position for me.
I want you to I wish I could have had you just repeat that again and again, because you said so many really great things, and this is such a good resource for early career professionals. So one of the things that that you said is, that you had this internal confidence, and whether that was, I'm going to make, I'm going to, play the role of therapist here because, as a recruiter, that's kind of sometimes our hat too. But the internal confidence, I think is such an important piece. And I do think that that's, part of it I think is everything that you've experienced, as you're, in your soccer career. So you kind of made it seem like you had like a Rudy element to your, do you know the Rudy element? Do you know the Rudy, the movie?
No.
No? Oh my gosh. All right.
I'll watch it though. I'll watch it this weekend.
You're going to have to watch that. It's a little bit older than I am. So, but I thought maybe it's a really great movie. Anyone my age and older will, can second that. But it's basically about an underdog, on the Notre Dame football team. And who he ends up, going on to, play an important game. But, anyways, the fact that you said like, okay, I wasn't really good and there was just something in me. I knew that I had to, I had to keep showing up and I had to keep trying. And it was these small improvements every day. That is such sound advice, Isabelle, because like you said, it can be really challenging if you don't fit that profile and you're being told, well, you don't have this experience. And, you at times, especially when you're very early in your career, you think, well, I don't know. Well, it is what it is. Like, I can't change my experience because it is, there's, no matter how hard I might work, I'm never going to have the same amount of, deal reps as someone that's coming from investment banking. But your attitude of just a small improvement every single day, and that's going to, over time, is going to build and build and build and give you, is going to help to kind of push you closer, I think is just really key. And I don't know if that's necessarily, it's probably, in my opinion, a combination of something innate that you have within yourself, something that might have also been kind of cultivated and developed further as a result of playing a competitive sport. But I think that is, when we put it into the context of making a career move, I think that this is, by far the best piece of advice anyone can have, because it's those, we think it has to be like this huge, like a big degree or, like this promotion. And really it's, the devil's in the details. It's the small, like the small thing. So I thought that was just really, really great advice. But I want to ask you, tell me a little bit about, just for those that are, that might be in a similar position, who don't have a traditional background. What were those small improvements? I know that you said that you were reading reports, but what were those small improvements that you were doing every day?
So I think how I sort of focused on my transition from equity capital markets to my next move was first taking like an time for exploration. And then once you decide, lean in and do all of those courses and prepare. So with the explorations part of the transition, that's just really being diligent and like using your network, even if it's just someone at your current bank or your current position who might have some exposure to what you want to do or what you think you might want to do. It's really important to talk to people because finance is such an apprenticeship business, and you learn so much more from talking to people than you could um, anywhere else. So I really urge people to take the time to still explore and to think. And then once you decide that this is something you want to do, I recommend Wall Street Preps courses. I think not to promote my own portfolio company, but Wall Street Prep is a fantastic training resource. I use them exclusively for training, so I thought that was a great way to get the foundational skills. There's also a lot of other blogs, even like Wall Street Oasis has some like online blogs where you can learn about people's experience, and learn some of those finer details. And then I also would say just prepare and read as much as you can, not just on the technical side, but also looking at past investments of private equity firms. There are quite a few books that go through pretty famous LBO transactions in the past, like Barbarians at the Gate. Like I am such a reader, so I read like 4 or 5 private equity books once I really decided that this is something I wanted to do. And there's plenty of other resources out there. So I think studying and talking to people, and then also once you have a few interviews lined up, um, going through practice interviews is also really key. I fortunately have my boyfriend who's in private equity, and I feel like just practicing interviews with him was the best thing I could do, because I learned more about private equity, because when he asked me my investment theses or thoughts, he was like, "Oh, I like what you said, but I would have also added X, Y, and Z," and I thought that even helped the learning experience.
How do you do this if you don't have a charming, handsome boyfriend like yours, who was also very, very, in tune with it? Like, what would be your advice for those that maybe are not as connected or plugged into, someone within that's actually working on the buy side?
I think you can reach out to a lot of people. I've been very impressed with how many people are really willing to take time out of their day to help people in the industry, especially other women in finance. I felt like I can message anyone, or meet someone once and then get coffee with them, and they're all always very generous with their time, and generous giving advice, or helping you prepare for something. So I think leveraging your network in any way you can. And then if you're still a student at school, there are plenty of other students who have done even internships at private equity firms that could have some insight and could help you prepare. I think really just leveraging the community around you as best as you can.
Okay. And what again, kind of going back to, so I guess, when I work with a lot of non-traditional candidates, and one of the main challenges that I see is that oftentimes we clients will talk to me about, having really strong technical skills. And if you don't have, if you're not coming from traditional banking, you're just simply not going to have, as in theory, as strong of technical foundation. But then I've also heard, others say that, that candidates can sometimes, let's just say they're strong on the technicals, but they're not able to kind of see the big picture and kind of connect everything. What do you think, like in your case, coming from ECM, what was some of the feedback that you had, or what did you find yourself struggling with? Was it more of the technicals, or was it more of kind of that big picture, connecting everything together element?
I think technicals for me were something you just had to put the time into. Once you spent a few days or a few weeks learning basic accounting, and then basic LBO modeling, I feel like it starts to really make sense. And I think Wall Street Prep for that case really does a great job. And then for the bigger picture, I think that's what I struggled with a little bit, because I was so focused on my niche within equity capital markets, which is just one component of finance. And it's sometimes hard to step away from your day job and be like, okay, now I need to think big picture. Get think more operationally too, because that's not something I had even thought of even when I was recruiting for investment banking. So that's where I think reading for me was really key, and that helped a lot. But also talking to people, even if they're not private equity people, someone who just works at a business, um, and understands some basic elements like especially for industrial businesses, what could be a potential driver of growth and improved profitability. I think those are some things that even people who had a traditional investment banking background might not understand. So I would just say for me, it was a lot of reading and a lot of talking to help get me over that bridge.
Mhm. Well, clearly exceeded that, because you ended up getting, you ended up making that transition and getting, the move to the buy side. And you mentioned another thing right now in terms of, mindset shift. And I want to connect that to your new role. So you've been recently promoted into a senior associate role. And I want to know, how that how that changes, right? Like what that transition looks like for you as an emerging leader, and that mindset shift that maybe has helped you, grow into this position, and kind of looking farther down the road.
Yeah. So the one thing I realized pretty early on within investment banking, and I'm sure this is true across many positions, is you are not going to be doing everything yourself. This is very much like soccer, where I have tried to just dribble down the field, but I know I'm not going to score that way. That's just like such a harder lift than better using your team and your resources. So I knew that as I transition, even from senior or associate to senior associate, which isn't still not like MD level, I'm not leading the team. I still have a leadership component. Now, I know I can't just be driving everything. I need to be I need to have a good working relationship with the people below me, and I need to I drive a very like efficient process and provide good feedback. So this pretty early on was something I knew that as soon as I get to the next level, this is something I really need to focus on, because the very successful MDs are always really strong leaders, very focused, and that's something I wanted to become in the future. So this was sort of my first step at that, and what I've sort of identified was it's important to have a strong working relationship. You want to, as you do with your soccer team, you want to enjoy spending time with them. You want to enjoy working on products and reward really strong work. And I think sometimes as a more leadership position, the people who are working on the materials from the ground up and don't always get the recognition. So I really early on emphasize like I want to make sure that any intern I'm working with or anyone below me is fully recognized. And then I also realize that like I want to provide guidance and be direct, but I don't want to provide too much guidance where I'm discouraging, where I'm constantly shifting words just because I prefer it. So I try to do a level balance of that, where I'm providing direct guidance that's clear and can be transferable to the future, but also trying to make a strong work environment for everyone to still enjoy what they're doing at the end of the day.
I love that. You're such a great leader in the making, and all the things that yeah, who wouldn't want to work for you, Isabel? Like with that response, um, it's made me think. Do you think that there is a difference with, because I feel like your response is very, and this is going to be like a very broad generalization. Of course, there are exceptions, but I feel like it's a very kind of female approach, to, like thoughtful in terms of, I want to make sure people are being recognized. I want to make sure that I'm giving good guidance, but I don't want to, it's a balance in terms of, guiding, but not, overcorrecting too much. Do you think that there's a difference, from what you've seen and what you've experienced in terms of how, females manage versus, kind of male manage? Not that one is necessarily better than the other, right? But do you feel that there is a difference? Because I feel like I've never really heard a male like really talk about the importance of everything that you just touched on with as much thoughtfulness. And so I want to hear kind of what you think about that.
It's I have I've had some very strong leaders, both female and male, in my career so far, and I feel like there's not one model that you follow. It's sort of the bits and pieces. Like my first MD was so focused, and I felt like he was very direct, and I really admired that because that saved hours off of all of our time. We didn't have to guess what he wanted. We knew, and I knew that's something that I really wanted to embody. And then here at Eden, some people I work with are very focused on making sure that even the lowest person is fully rewarded and recognized for their work. And so that's something I also admired and recognize that that's something that I want to embody as a leader. So I think because I probably haven't worked with enough people to really see the female male differences. I can't make a strong statement on that, but I sort of just think about what elements of their leadership style and work style do I want to sort of embody with how I lead in the future. And that's sort of how I approached it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, let's take a little pivot right now, and let's talk about maybe some of the things that you're doing at Eden. So you've taken the lead with introducing and implementing AI into the workflows. So I want to touch on. I think this is a really interesting point, and I love that that at the senior associate level, you're being charged with something that's so important. So, what sparked your interest in this, and how do you think, how has it so far transformed the way the team operates and approaches deal sourcing?
Yeah, so I think just stepping back foundationally into sort of how I operate. I like to describe myself as the laziest, not lazy person. In that, I mean, I don't like doing things that are just inefficient or doing things multiple times and not being super straightforward and clear. And I sort of learned this through my banking experience. We would sometimes be up very late and the Excels would be disorganized, not clear, and would just add hours to something that would be a simple task. So I think through that experience, I really learned that the way you set things up, the foundation really dictates the speed and efficiency and even quality of the work. So with that, as soon as I had a few too many late nights, I decided I need to remake some of these backups, clean them up. And this was even like before I started implementing AI. I had this mindset of trying to make things as efficient as possible for the sake of quality and speed, because no one wants to be doing something for 10 hours that theoretically could take like 10 minutes.
Of course.
So when ChatGPT was released, I knew that this would be something great. Like I was very excited to find ways to leverage it, and it sort of just popped up naturally. Anytime there was a task that couldn't immediately be sort of automated through Excel, I started to think about how AI and ChatGPT could help start to automate it. And for that, that was deal outreach. Literally the day I was assigned my prop outreach, we usually cover a sector and then you do research and decide on outreaching on companies. That day I realized this is a very repetitive task. There's very little value add on independently writing it when ChatGPT can write a more personal email at a faster pace. So I made an Excel template that sort of automates both the company selection and also the email writing process and sending process. And there's, of course, human input. Like, I don't want to make it completely impersonal and
Mhm.
AI or focused, but it really increased thing at speed of which we can reach out to companies. Like I can usually reach out to 100 in under 30 minutes if I'm focused.
Mhm.
So it really lessens the load of a lot of those tasks. And that was sort of what catalyzed my further interest into utilizing AI for improving tasks that necessarily aren't value add by me personally doing them. If I can do the same quality quick or same level of quality quicker, I don't think that's something I should even be doing, because there's plenty of other things, especially at a small firm where our resources are constrained. So there's an unlimited amount of work you could be doing. Like, I'm never sitting at my desk being like, oh, what's next? Like, I already have a list of things I need to do. So that also catalyzed the beginning of our like internal strategy and focus on trying to incorporate elements of AI into the deal process, the due diligence, portfolio management. I would say my managing partners are very focused on this and are very encouraging of us to be exploratory, and also encouraging for us to take the next step and find products and ways to implement it. So I was sort of staffed as like the go-to AI person just because of my interest and have been able to review many providers and ultimately selected a provider that will help us start to automate a lot of our workflow. So that by itself was such a great learning experience because I learned everything that is out there. I learned what could be out there, and then also now working on the implementation process, it's been very exciting to see what goes into the nuts and bolts of fully automating workflows and what it takes. A lot of implementation time for, I believe, a really strong outcome.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the response, like in terms of like just from the deal sourcing, you're able to reach out to 100 firms within 30 minutes. Has it improved your your response rates? Are you feeling like you're getting more engagement?
Yeah, that was sort of the funny part was because AI is able to make it more personalized by like I always feed it information about the company as much as I can. Um, it's able to make more personalized emails to that company, and some of the responses are like, "This is one of the best emails I've ever received." Some people are like, "You know this business so well," and it's like, "Yes, I do." um, but yeah, no, I think it does a higher quality job, and the numbers don't lie either. Um, I don't know what my current response rate is, but it's more than double if I were to handwrite them. And there was one quarter that I actually received responses from over 30% of all people I've emailed, which for prop outreach is ridiculously high.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, I think year over year, our averages are like 6%. So 30 to 6%. It was I wasn't even expecting that much of a rate increase.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And is the rest of the team, the rest of the org, I mean, you guys are like I think probably around 12 people or so, 10 to 12 people, right? Is it something that everyone is able to is using in the firm at this point?
I will say most of the people who are doing the bulk of the prop outreach are using it. Of course, more senior people who have stronger networks are able to just tap into their networks and don't necessarily need to be doing 100 plus outreaches to sort of cover a sector. So I think, yeah, after training the team, a lot of people have been very excited with the results and have seen good numbers.
Mhm. How do you think that that is going to shape, the broader space? Because I mean, if you're doing it, I'm sure. Well, actually, no. Maybe that's a false assumption. Maybe not everyone is doing it. Sometimes you can be really surprised and be like, oh, you guys still do that? Have you? So I guess let me break that question down. Do you find that you are maybe among the few that are using it in this capacity, or do you feel that most firms have now kind of caught on and are kind of also implementing it in a similar fashion?
I'm not exactly sure. From talking to other people at different private equity firms, I do feel like we're a little bit ahead of the curve since it's been a focus of ours since I joined. Um, so I do think we're a little bit ahead of the curve. I feel like people are starting to realize the importance of it, particularly in the lower middle market, because the lower middle market has more room for that proprietary outreach,
Mhm.
whereas larger private equity firms are more likely to do banked deals. We sort of have to, we also have banked deals, but we sometimes have to hunt for our own deals, and that's when the outreach component begins. And I think that in particular is one of the best use cases for private equity. And then I do feel like the from my market research of different private market AI companies, there are several products that are out there that are starting to really develop a strong product offering and thesis for people to adopt. It's just sometimes the implementation is a little bit longer than people expect. Sometimes people are hesitant to adopt the technologies because they're like, oh, I've always done it this way. Why would I do it this way? Even if it's going to increase my pace. And even the quality of work, some people are a little bit slower to adopt. And I feel like, so it might just take a little bit more time than one would think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really it's really interesting. I actually had a candidate. I had mentioned to him, he was an investment banker and he wanted to make a move to the buy side. And he said, I recommended to him, like, oh, well, you have access to PitchBook. So, you should have, you should look at the firms that are of target or that have interest and target them. And then, you can use AI, you can use ChatGPT to, kind of customize these messages. And he went one step further, and he basically ended up like using AI. He created a formula, just like you kind of fed it. And he told me that he was having 5 networking calls a day as a result of his outreach, which is 5 networking calls a day. And I was like, you're doing this every day? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I actually had to turn down the frequency of the messaging because I'm work full time. So I can't feasibly have 5 conversations every single day for, more than a couple weeks. But he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I'm having anywhere between like 20 to 25 calls, which, he went basically from like 0 to that, which I was blown away. It was like, that's amazing. That's like, I was proud of him. I was like, because my advice to him was like, you need to build your tribe, you need to get in front of people, you need to talk to people if you want to make the move. Like that is the best way to do that, and that's how you should spend your time. When we're looking at a job search. But he went overboard in a good way and created this program. So it really, it's, I think there's like a lot of talk about it will, AI will take over, some of our jobs. And I think really it's more around how can we use it to complement, the work that we're already doing and to help us to, improve. And like you said, make things, like these really not menial, but these very, time consuming tasks that can, that can be repeated and scaled up a little bit. This is a really great way. So it's really interesting to hear. I'd like to to kind of touch in or touch base with you like in a year to see what else you've then, been able to do, because if this is probably, if it's working for you in this capacity, I'm sure there are other ways that you can use it to kind of help, in other areas of the firm.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, all right, let's start to wrap up just a little bit, Isabelle. So, I want to go back again to the mentoring piece, because I like I said, I think that's it's such an important part of a career in this space. And you and I know, and we've had many conversations around this, sometimes it can be very hard, especially for young women in who are coming from investment banking and want to, or who are already on the buy side and struggling. And I find a lot of the times it's because they lack that mentorship, they lack those relationships, and oftentimes it's because of that. Not all the time, but a lot of the times it can be one of the driving factors in terms of why they end up leaving private equity or end up leaving the investment space. So I want to touch on leadership for especially for women, and I want to talk about ways that you think that the industry can improve mentorship for women, and not just women, but for just the broader, underrepresented groups.
Yeah, so I'll start with what we do well. One thing since coming to the buy side, I've noticed and have really appreciated is just all of the strong organizations that are created to help women. Synergist, Avante has a lot of women focused events that have been fantastic, and then also Capital Supper Club. Those most Synergist and Avante are global, but there are quite a few organizations within New York as well that are fantastic. And I think those have been really key to me as I continue to grow. I feel like I have people from different firms, but people I can reach out to if I ever have any questions, concerns, or even just want to catch up and learn something from them. So that's something I've noticed as an established person on the buy side. This is something that's great, and I really, really, really value. I think where it's really lacking is getting women into finance, um, and I feel like I sort of, as a non-traditional candidate and as someone transitioning from soccer who didn't really belong to any finance related clubs in those pivotal times, I feel like I also suffered from and can sort of see if um, like any other person in the same situation would really struggle getting into finance. And I think one thing, it's just as a woman, we do not have as large of a community sometimes. And this community really helps you learn some of those nuts and bolts. And it's not necessarily that you don't or you can't make it in that you're not qualified or that you're not able to compete in this industry. It might just be the small things, like, for example, sending calendar invites when you have a coffee chat with someone at a firm you want to work. I remember talking to my interns who both belonged to this NYU finance club. They were like, this is something that like we drill in from day one. This is what you have to do. No excuses. Like, it's a small thing, but it matters. And sometimes from people who come from more non-traditional backgrounds, or might not be part of those finance clubs, they don't know. It's the small details that are sometimes lacking. And I feel like since the community is sometimes a little bit smaller, as a more senior position, I have to provide that additional level of mentoring that they may have gotten from their peers if they were part of an organization on campus. But since they're not, I feel like I have sort of that role in providing feedback. So I feel like that's sort of where I feel like we're sometimes lacking is in that community element of it, especially helping people go from university to finance and then banking or whatever it may be to private equity is someone on the other side that is providing that community that they might not have on this current side they're on.
Mm-hmm. How important do you think it is? And I mean, this is a trick question. But how important do you think it is to work with the right recruiter?
I think it's very important because I feel like it's a very competitive industry, of course, and there are many investment bankers who want to go over, or even non-investment bankers who want to switch over to private equity. And I feel like this is a very sort of emotionally draining process as well. And the recruiter is sort of like your source to the other side, your light at the end of the tunnel, like, and talking to someone who is truly on your side and it just wants the best for you is such a difference. Because and I know a lot of great people, great recruiters, but Alexis particularly was I felt like you were on my team, and just wanted me to be happy and wanted me to have success and find success. So I felt like that really just gave me that extra lift at the end of, or jump in my step, and it gave me more confidence going into all my interviews. And I will also say, I don't know from any of my friends' experiences how many of their recruiters also did mock interviews and really provided guidance. It was sort of they felt like they were just helping them get to the next step. I felt like Alexis helped me prepare to get to the next step. So I felt like that extra little push and help really paid dividends in the end, and gave me more confidence going into my interviews.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I was fishing for some compliments, clearly. No, but the reason why I think that's I want to make, I really want people to understand that, because I mean, there's a ton of recruiters, and there's a ton of, candidates have a ton of choices and clients have a ton of choices. But there are some recruiters that are, better than others in the sense that it's less transactional. And so what I always tell, because a lot of these firms, the thing is, when you work with like a boutique, the in general, like the attention and the service that you're going to receive is a little bit different. And I try to tell candidates, always you always want to have, and this is sound advice for anyone, you want to have in your tribe, you want to have really great relationships with obviously the folks in the space, but the recruiters in the space, right? So you should always have a couple that are just your trusted partners, and you think of them like that, because not all recruiters are made the same. Not all firms, every firm is a different animal. And so the relationship that they have with those recruitment partners can essentially be a reflection of the culture within that organization. So it really pays to have, a really strong recruiter that has, obviously one that you like, and one that you trust. And I think that that's, that's one of the key things, because a good recruiter is going to, invite you to be on their podcast and, and is going to stay in touch. Right. And is hopefully going to have, a great relationship. I mean, that's, I think, ideally what it is. So I think that that's, and I don't know how many, especially younger candidates, see that. But I think when you look at, I actually had this conversation with my husband yesterday. I was looking at outreach at different firms for just career rock stars. And I said something to the extent of, I was looking at someone very, very senior. And I thought, this, this guy probably has, he already has like his list of top recruiters that he's been working with, for decades, right? For a really, really long time. Because that's when you talk to those senior folks, they usually do. They usually have like, 3 to 5 recruiters that they've been working with for a really long time. And so if you can build that relationship early on, then I think that they, like a truly good recruiter is going to accompany you throughout your career, even if they're not placing you, right? So even if you go on and you move to a different place, or any of my other candidates, right? Like, I'm still following your career. I still want to see you succeed. So I think that it's really important to build those relationships early on. But all right, so wrapping up here, I love this conversation, and I haven't had too many podcast guests that were also candidates and are now at the client. So I really take a lot of pride in that, and it's a nice full circle moment for me to see my candidate go from candidate to friend to podcast guest, because when I go to New York, we have our little coffees and our little sessions here. But I want to end on what you feel is maybe the best. Let's go back to, where you were before you made the move to private equity. What advice would you give to someone in that same position? And what advice would you give to your peers right now at the senior associate level that are already on the buy side?
So for the people trying to make the move, I would just say this is such a stressful but also very exciting moment, and sometimes you just need to think about how far you've come already from just being a university student. Everyone wanted like where you are now, and you worked really, really hard to get there, and you should recognize that is an achievement in itself. But just because you've done that in the past doesn't also means that you can do it again in the future. So I think that for me at least, it's been past experiences really shaped how I approach future ones. And I think that's really key when you're in those very emotionally draining, tough moments when you're fighting to get onto the buy side. You just know like you can do it. You've done it in the past and you can do it again. So I think sometimes it's hard to be appreciative of where you are now. And that's important to give you the confidence and I guess excitement again to get to the next spot. And then for the associates on the buy side, going forward, I think it's just take every day as a learning opportunity. I always think about what am I going to do today that I'm learning, and how can I get better every single day, and it sort of ties back to that point of success is made with incremental changes, and I think that's something I try to take away, because now 2 years into private equity, I know the tasks I need to do. I know the what's required of me, but it's what's not required of me, and what I need to learn that will get me to the next step. So I think that's also something important to focus on.
Sound advice. I love it. Small improvements every day. That's what I have gathered from this conversation, and I know that you said it at the beginning of the episode as well. Well, I mean, I have already thought very highly of you from the day that I spoke with you, and I always saw something in you. And that is something that transmitted from day one. And like I said, it's a really nice moment to see you come kind of full circle. Because not only do I continue to see that, but I see more, and I see a lot more. The potential that I saw 2 years ago, I see how it has developed and has evolved, and and I'm excited to see how you take that and shape it, and it takes you into the next chapter of your career, Isabelle. So thank you for being a guest. You are, of course, a lady who rocks, and you're a rock star in every sense of that definition. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me. It was so nice to talk with you again.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to Take the Stage. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To hear past shows, please go to our website, career-rockstars.com. If you are a company or candidate who would like to work with Career Rockstars, reach out on LinkedIn or send an email to Alexis at career-rockstars.com. Thanks again, and until next time.